Okay, let me get my banners happening here. So, okay, we are live, family. Good evening, and yeah, welcome to everyone here, and we are, I only go back to back when there's urgent information that hits my desk, okay, and that cannot be delayed. Now, that information that hit my desk, is so fresh. We're just going to just introduce it, and we're going to give it some justice and go deeper into it in a full build in a future subsequent presentation. Good evening, Sammy. Good evening, Kofi. Um, appreciate you. Appreciate you. So yes, and I'll share the information. We'll tease it today, and we'll tease it a little bit, and then do the deep dive, and then really go deep with the family in the next presentation. There. Good evening, Priscilla. Appreciate you there. But we're going to do that, and I will close out today, and Eris Johnson will begin the presentation. Good evening, Original Skywalker, and so, but I want the family to know this here. This is what I can tell you. And everyone should be aware of this, right? They're listening to us. They have sleeper cells among us, but I have a message for them. You can't stop us. This is divine ancestral energy that supports us, and our ancestors' will be done. Because we're backed and supported by that divine cosmic ancestral energy family, and we're unstoppable. So my advice to the opponent is best to maybe rethink what you want to do, because we're America's last defense. You may want to think about being an ally, or you're just going to get rolled over, right? So, and yes, again, family, they brought me this information, and let me quickly share a little bit and tease what came on my desk here. And this is very fresh information here. Hold on, let me share my screen. Share my screen here. Welcome, Empress Hobart. Appreciate you there. Welcome, Karen. Fresh on my desk, and we're going to tease this here. And wow, I mean, they are definitely listening and trying to come up with their own countermeasures. Welcome, Ms. Lita. Okay, so let me briefly share with the family what came on my desk here. And this was sent to me by my Japanese friend, here in Japan. He's a very good friend. I consider him a brother. He sent this to me here. So make sure the family can see that. Hold on. Make sure they can see what I'm sharing here. Okay, yes, you can see that. So now this article, and look at the top left, National Geographic. Oh my God, anything come from them, we know who sponsors them, right? We know exactly who sponsors them. Oh, welcome, Mike. Welcome, Air Cyprus. So here, let me just read a little bit of this here, right? Now, as you see the date of the article, this is a fresh article. It is, where is it? Where is it? Published June 15th, 2023, family. Fresh off the presses, okay? Now, it says longtime columnist and author Rodney A. Brooks, was able to trace his family's history to Nigeria as a result of newly available records and tools that now provide information about the American experience for Black people. Prior to 1870, U.S. records rarely noted names of enslaved and formerly enslaved people. Pictured above is a collection of the Brooks family photos. So they have new tools and new available records to connect so-called Black people to Africa. And in this particular case, this particular columnist and author, Rodney A. Brooks, alleges that he traced his family's history to Nigeria. Now let's just, we're just going to introduce and tease it today because I have to take a deep dive on this, and we're going to go into this in the next presentation, right? But I just wanted to introduce this information because it hit my desk last night or yesterday there. Right. So the writer just traced his enslaved ancestors all the way to Africa. Here's how. Prior to 1870, records rarely noted names of enslaved and formerly enslaved people, creating a genealogical brick wall. But new records and tools are changing things. So that's his intro there. New records and tools are changing things. So let's see what he says here. Um, So he knew little about either side of his family. His mom was from Warrenton, North Carolina, and his father from Maryland. So let's get down to this part. Everything changed in the last year. Newly available records from the National Archives, Freedmen's Bureau, provide earlier and richer data about the American experience, often predating the quote 1870s wall, unquote, that marked the first appearance of many Black people by name on a U.S. census. All right. So he said that with this new information from the Freedmen's Bureau, National Archives Freedmen's Bureau's records, that he's able to break through that 1870s wall. And then let's continue here, family. He says here, um, then after a DNA test, let me repeat that, after a DNA test and further research, I was able to trace my ancestry on the Brooks side back to Charles Butler, my ninth great grandfather, who was born in Nigeria in 1650 and enslaved on a plantation in St. Mary's County. Let's stop right there. This is the what kind of shocked me when I got this on my desk yesterday, family. So the columnist says that results of the DNA test enabled him to trace his Brooks side to Charles Butler, his ninth great grandfather, who was born in where? Nigeria in 1650. And not only that, so he can locate the ancestor, knows the ancestor's name, knows what part of West Africa he came from in 1650, and he knows exactly where he arrived in North America, St. Mary's County, Maryland. And he continues, and I learned the fascinating story of Eleanor Iris Nell Butler, the white indentured servant from Ireland who married Charles, his ancestor, despite a warning that she and their children would be slaves. Okay, so now he allegedly discovered that his ancestor, Charles Butler, born in Nigeria in 1650, came to St. Mary's County, married an Irish so-called pale-skinned servant, and they had a family. And we're talking to 1600s family. All right. And it says Charles lived until he was 90 on that plantation in Leonardtown, Maryland, never tasting the life of freedom. In one of the slaveholders' estate inventories in 1730, he was described as, quote, elderly Negro man named Charles, who was, quote, very old and very lame, unquote. And then he says, several of Charles and Nell's descendants later went to court to get their freedom and won. And now, this is what floored me, this statement right here, family. I believe I now know how Alex Haley felt when he was researching his book, Roots, and when he saw his descendants come to life in the ABC television network's miniseries in 1977. So now this individual can now understand how Alex Haley felt when Alex Haley discovered his African ancestors, and Alex Haley's story was brought to life in that infamous ABC television miniseries, family. And let's just share a little bit more here. So here he says he had a Zoom meeting here with a historian. She had traced the Brooks family history back to his great-great-grandfather David Brooks and his brother James in St. Mary's County through the 1870 census. And then here, he later sent a DNA test to Ancestry and discovered that his ethnicity was 28% Nigerian and 23% Cameroonian. That led to links to dozens of second and third, fourth cousins that he never knew, mostly on his mother's side. Several reached out to him, family, including one cousin whose grandfather was his maternal grandfather's brother. Wow, because this is what we've been all looking for, because it's all about bringing families together. So if these tools they're using can bring these families together, their long lost family members, but now it's going to get more interesting, family, because all of his ancestors, including the one he said is from Nigeria in 1650, were landlords. Not only landlords, they had their own town in Maryland. And if he found his cousins, living cousins now, what does that mean at law? That means that his cousins over there in Africa can go claim their estate here in Maryland if they're related. Okay, now let's get to here. Little did I know when I moved to Maryland that my family's history was just hours away. Both Matthew and Bessie, his paternal grandparents, were born in Leonardtown, close to the plantation where their relatives had been enslaved. St. Mary's County, founded in 1637, was home to the first Maryland colony and was named for Mary, Mother of Jesus. All right, and then let me get to the part here, down here. Breakthrough walls. Okay, so yeah, you're listening to this here. Using my Freedmen bureaus, my research team yielded a legal contract signed in November 1870 between David Washington Brooks, his great-great-grandfather, and his older brother James Brooks, with former slaveholders, the Turners, for 35 acres of land. David and James paid $100 in cash and pledged to pay the remainder in an installment plan. 124 in the first year, 118 in the second, and $112 in the third, and $106 in the fourth. They paid off that contract and bought another 40 acres in the spring of 1878 for $400. So that's what, 70, 75 acres there, family. It's a lot of land. Wow. I mean, how many people here would love to buy 75 acres that easily, right? Um, and then here, let's get to this part here quickly. Oh yeah, right here. All right. So here, he said his biggest fear was that the farmland that his family owned was lost or stolen. But research from the St. Mary's County Historical Society showed a happier ending. That 75 acres of his family's farmland stayed in the family until it was sold in 1958. So, wait a minute. So, basically, from the late 1600s, early 1700s, his family land was all the way in the family until 1958. And he said it was sold. I mean, that's not good news, but he thinks that's good news. But now let me get to show you the cemetery down here. His family cemetery right here. The Old Joseph Cemetery, circa 1759. And it says here, this all black cemetery in St. Mary's County in Maryland is where his great great grandfather is buried. Brooks trekked to the cemetery in search of ancestors' headstones. So this is part of their own all-black cemetery in their own town, part of St. Mary's County in Maryland, that his family had all this land until 1958, according to him. Um, but we're, oh yeah, here, Charles and Iris Nell Butler. This is the one he says here, who's born in Nigeria in 1650. But we have information, of course, to dispute all of this, which we will present in a future presentation. I just wanted to introduce to the family this here hot article off the presses, published June 15th, just a few days ago. And obviously, they are, again, watching us, listening to us, coming up with their own countermeasures, right? And the opponent's busy. But again, they will not be able to stop us. So, but today, as you see, the thumbnail has the image with the alleged image of Araminta Ross Stewart, aka Harriet Tubman. And during my presentation at the end, I will do my own interpretation on her, but I'll focus primarily more on her father. Others in the community, um, you know, did their interpretations of Araminta Ross Stewart. I'll do my own, in addition to another infamous Ross. And then, but before that, and Eris Johnson will give her presentation to the family here. So let me stop sharing my screen and take it away there, Eris Johnson. Unmute yourself.
Hello, greetings to oh, high vibes. I didn't mean to say hello. High vibes to everyone. Greetings, 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 greetings. I see all the wonderful women and men in the chat, royals in the chat, aboriginals, Indians in the chat, and thank you so much again for coming out tonight. I see all of my favorites and some new faces as well. My daughter joined in. Okay, Regina, I see you. So I'm so grateful to have you all joining me and my silly self here with us. And Amani, you know what? I gotta say, I am so jealous. How in the world are they finding Africans and we can't? What is going on?
Tell me about it. My
I,
God, I mean, I would love to find, and that same information, and I am dying to slap
mhm,
lawsuits over there and get a gold mine, a cobalt mine in the Congo. I
mhm.
mean, I'm dying to go to battle with the Chinese over there who took, who's taking the land over there. I'm
I'm
dying for
right there
that.
with you. And what did you say? What kind? What is it? Cobalt or something is there that they just
Well,
discovered?
yeah,
Mhm,
cobalt that
mhm,
they use for the batteries.
mhm.
Um, a lot of that is the Congo, and the
Okay.
Chinese are controlling all those mines down there, right? So they say we're from there. Some of us, especially in Virginia, They said they came over in those speedboats there to
Mhm.
Virginia. So, bro, I mean, I would love to have, I don't discriminate now. If I have inheritance anywhere on the
No.
planet, I'm going to go after it, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's just interesting because all the Africans, when we try to do genealogy, they're hiding, they're somewhere in the cut. I don't know. They mask themselves as doctors and lawyers and attorneys and farmers and knights and kings and queens and royalty. What is going on? I don't get it. Aboriginals, chiefs. What's going on with? Okay, why can't we find what everybody else is finding? Because I don't know. I'm jealous. I'm jealous. I really am. I don't get it. But you all, as you all know, this crowd knows that DNA is fake. I have my own personal stories about it. I thankfully wasn't foolish enough to take one, but I do have family members that did. It came back as 100% African, no migration pattern, no relative that was deceased. Just everybody was just happened to be here in the Americas. I don't know how that happened, and they happened to pop up around. Actually, they popped up around 1790. The name said so. That was interesting. Also, as far as like I said, there's no migration period. Everybody's come from Africa. I actually recorded myself several times talking to these idiots. If I could, if I could upload it, I would. The only thing is when I did record them, I had my earplugs in, and because I had my earplugs in, you can only hear me talking. But I went in on them, lying about the ancestors. I had several family members that took the test, and what happens is when they took this particular test, what would happen is they would give you like a breakdown of how much you're related percentage wise, like 0 point, this is your third to fifth cousin, it stated. So then, so with this this particular situation, the individual gave me the DNA test, and I said, okay, let me take a look at it and look at this silly thing. So I clicked on it, and then so I clicked on one individual it said that we're related to, and then it came back that you're not related to him. I said, okay, well, maybe it was just a fluke. I'm thinking at this point, it's just we got to be related to the, living people, maybe not the deceased people. I kid you not, you all, I hit about 10 different names till finally I got so upset and I took a screenshot of it. So I sent it to the family member that took this test and I said, look, I said, let me show you what's going on. When you click on these names and they said that you're related to this individual, when you click on it, the name, or you click on their image, it says you're not related. They still didn't get it. It was like, well, that doesn't mean anything. Yes, it does. Yeah, it does. It does mean something. So then I called them up and I asked them, I called the DNA facility up and I asked them several questions. I said, well, where's the migration period? Well, they came up with some kind of excuse I can't remember, but they said they went back 500 years. And I said that's interesting because at that time, this is like 4 years ago. I said I can go back at the very least 300 years. I said my people are from Mississippi. Where is the Mississippi in here? There's no there. As a matter of fact, what it turned out to be is they don't take any DNA genealogy from anybody in the South. No one. So when I looked at the charts, you can actually minimize it and you see where they're taking the DNA extracts from. It's somewhere from the islands that I never heard of in my life. I can't even say the Caribbean, like Brazil or, somewhere with mostly melanated people. It's some remote island that's probably abandoned. And I said, well, who in my family came from this? This wasn't in the slave narrative. I didn't hear about this particular island. Who are these people? So they said, well, you don't match those people. Well, I mean, that's where they're taking you from. So to say that you're not from America, I said, okay, well, who are the names of the people that I matched in Africa? They couldn't tell me. So fast forward to a coworker who was really African. She was part African, part American. She told me that her grandmother, long story short, her mother was from America, her father was from Kenya. So this was in 2017. I'm all excited. I'm like a Hebrew, not a Hebrew, what do you call it? Jehovah Witness. Everybody that I meet that's melanated, I'm like, guess what? You're from America. You're not African. So she actually corrected me and said, "Yeah, we are from Africa." She was. And so she told me she's part Kenyan. She just looked at me and she said, "I know." And I was so shocked because she was only 25 years old. And so she told me that what happened in her situation, she said that slave, she's just really broke it down to me. I was literally in shock because I've been fighting with family members, other coworkers, friends, everybody. So for her to be so open to it, I was shocked. So what ended up happening was, what's my surname, DJ? Are you asking me? Oh, he's talking to me or no? Okay. Johnson is a surname, and then my married name is Wright, and then there we go. I don't know if you're talking to me, DJ, but anyway, so what she ended up doing was, she she said her grandmother had a very rare allergic reaction to dish detergent. So it was so severe that she would end up in the hospital. And so what ended up happening, okay, I get it, DJ. Yep, Brighton and Johnson. All right, so then she ended up going to the hospital. So it was so rare that the doctors, it was such a rare case that they wanted to do extra studies on it. So this is true DNA, you guys. The doctor had to get the permission from the coroner's office, not the coroner's office. I'm sorry, from the who was it? The they had to a judge. They had to sign out from a judge. They had to get a judge order. In addition to that, there were had to be 2 to 3 living family members, meaning the lady that had to have the test, her siblings, if they were still living, they had to sign off on it. If it wasn't, the siblings were not living, then the siblings' oldest children had to sign off on it. So they got that authority because I think one of her sisters was still living, and then one of her nieces or nephews was still living. She got that signed off. Okay, so we got the doctor's orders, we got the signatures from the direct children. Then we had a judge that signed off on it. Everything's good, right? So they took and they found the ancestor. They found her grandmother. Well, the other lady, her great grandmother. They did the what do you call them when they dig up the uh, the remains, and they did extraction on it. When they did the extraction, it came back, that it was something that was a condition that was in this particular family. And also, but what gave they gave them a full report of, their blood type, all kind of things came out. What came back was this lady who was probably she was born in the 1800s, Mississippi. They said she came back 99% American. So they had a name, they dug up an ancestor, they had a judge that signed off on it, they had a doctor's order, and they had the family members that said it was okay. When you do your DNA test, what are you getting? Are you getting a doctor to sign off on it? Are you getting a judge? Are you getting family members that said it's okay? What's the name of the family member that they dug up? What was the results? None of this is happening with these DNA tests. None of it. They're lying. And if our people don't wake up, I'm like, gosh, how do we get from being, royalty and chiefs and to believing what these people talk about DNA? How do we get to this point? But that's okay. We're here. That's why, people like ourselves, all of us in in the chat, and Amani and myself, that's what we're doing. We're trying to counter attack this. So any other celebrity or anyone else that gets, you know, think that they have ancestry in Africa, if they could be so kind to do their genealogy, if they need assistance, Monty has his information. And now he's not plugging anything like that, but I'm just saying, stop being so naive. Stop being so naive. Do your genealogy. It's not that, it shouldn't be that difficult for you all to do your genealogy. If we could do it, you all could do it. So this is ridiculous. But going back to the article, when he told me, I didn't do a really deep dive on that, but the name sounded so familiar. Lisa, I see you up in there. I see you. There was something about a Brooks. I'm familiar with the Brooks family. Going back to a story that I'm trying not to tell the story, but it's such a good story. The Roanoke Island, one of the people that allegedly were stranded on that island were the Brooks family. It was about 20 of them. and they come from a huge, they come from a huge family, and they also were royal. So it's interesting that this young man's name is Brooks. It's very interesting to me that he chose, that was his last name. Also, I did some just a little bit of research on some of the family names that he mentioned. And one of the first one thing there was you want me to bring up the article or you want me to bring up the lady first, Amani? Okay, he may have stepped away. So I'm going to bring up one of the ladies that he meant. No, I'm going to bring up the article first. So there was an article, ironically, written by someone named. Oh, I'm not sharing. Okay, let me share my screen. Um, Let me
Hold
share
on, I'll
my
put you on. Hold on.
screen. Okay.
Oh yeah, go ahead and share. Go ahead and share.
Yep. Yep, Lisa, that's one of my ancestors. The Johnsons, not on my father's side, but on the mother's side, is my ancestors. Yes, they are my ancestors. Yes, they are. Anthony Edmund Johnson is my great uncle. Edmund Johnson. That's his name. People always want to say he's Anthony Johnson, uh, from some slave ship in, I don't know, in the Spain or something. But no, he was straight from England. He was royal, and his name was Anthony Edmund Johnson. That was his name. All right, so going back to the Brooks family, here we go. So what did I do with her? What did I do with her thing? Okay, I don't know what I did with the article just that fast. All right, so but anyways, going back to this individual right here. This was one of the ladies that was mentioned. Nellie Quander was related to the actual gentleman. And what was the name of the gentleman in the article? Amani, I forgot. Amani.
Hold on a second. I
Here we
always
go.
mute
I got it.
myself
That's
when
okay. I
you're
got
talking.
it.
Hold on one second.
That's okay. That's
You have it?
okay.
Okay. Okay.
I got
Yeah, I
it. I
think it's
got it.
me. Yeah.
So it was Brooks, right? Wasn't his name Brooks?
Yes.
Okay, isn't it interesting that there was an article written in 1982 by a Rebecca Brooks? That's very interesting to me. So anyway, she talked about her ancestors, the Quander and the Quander family, and it was another family that she talked about. Well, this is who this gentleman was talking about. He was part of this particular bloodline. Was this particular family? Her name and the lady's name was this name carried over Nellie Quander. This is Nellie Quander. She not only is this Nellie Quander, excuse me, this very astute, beautiful young lady is actually responsible for what? Kappa Alpha sorority. Who? How did he do? Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority is his ancestor. They come from a line going way back, like he said, to Maryland. Very well. Look at this. I think this probably is a crest. I wouldn't even be surprised. Very wealthy family, very, very wealthy family, very astute family. Look at her. She looks, look at her. Look how she's looking right there. So they come from royalty. I mean, what in the world? How did the African get in this narrative? I'm really confused. I'm very confused. But somehow they ended up backtracking, leaving the Brooks, part of that Roanoke Island Brooks, and then also coming to somehow I don't know, they were on two ships at the same time. Were they part of the Roanoke Island Brook family, and then they got on a slave ship and then got on and then came to the island in 16. I don't know what they did. How did they how did they end up on two boats around the same time and two different stories? But anyway, this is a part of Amani will go into more detail about this particular family, but the whole thing about them being slaves in Africa, that's a farce. They're making that up again for you celebrities and those that are not celebrities, people like that are just regular people, for you all to leave your wealth. for you all to leave all of the land that your ancestors left here for you, along with all of the artifacts that we are going to get back from these thieves, and then also to leave whatever you have abroad. So I wish you all would stop for those that are listening, not those in the chat, but those that are into this DNA garbage and those that are into any of the not doing their genealogy, please stop it. You're making a fool out of yourselves. You really are. You're really making a fool out of yourselves. And you're disrespecting your ancestors. I think that's the most important thing is that you're disrespecting your ancestors. Alrighty. Okay. So what Amani wanted me to do is continue on with this those 25 people that was named to be Africans. And come to find out, they have no African DNA or genealogy. I shouldn't say DNA, but genealogy. At least we couldn't find any. I couldn't find any. So the next person up to the table is Mr. Michael Jordan, him and his family. So everybody knows who Michael Jordan is. One of the most renowned basketball. I'm from Chicago, so I'm going to say he's the best. But maybe playing basketball. One of the best. I won't say he's the best. I think all of our men and women here are the best collectively. So he's one of the best that ever did it, and he was comes from a very very um, reputable family as well, and he was mentioned on that particular documentary or that particular video about 25 Africans. Now, I could see maybe people are just being, I don't know if they're just looking at the height, the very melanated color, copper colored. I don't know why they came to that narrative with him because looking at him to me, he doesn't look anything like an African. But that's just me. That's how I look. That's how I look at him. He is dark in color, but one thing about the sun is not lopsided. It does go, it does shine everywhere throughout the world. That's one thing about that great sun. It does come over here in the Americas too. Even though people will tell you otherwise, it does come over here in the America. It shows his pretty little face every, from time to time. So anyway, this is Michael Jordan. I always like to start with the father. We all know about his father. He loved his dad. He looked just like his daddy. He was a daddy's boy, and it's a good thing. I won't go into Wikipedia too much because I really don't like Wikipedia, to be honest with you all. But they do just give general information. I just look for the dates, look for the names and the dates and see if they match up. Names match up. Parents were Willie Jordan and Rosabelle. This is Mr. Jordan. So I'm going to go over here and see if this information is the same. I need to open up another page so I can look at the chat because I want to make sure you guys can still hear me. Can everybody hear me? Okay. Okay, Ms. Moore. I understand. I think a lot of people feel the same way that that Jordan and just the celebrities just in general, they know what's going on. I just try to give them the benefit of the doubt, but most of them they know. They know. But anyway, and I agree with you. I don't disagree with you at all, not one iota. Alrighty, so we're going to Mr. James Jordan, Raymond Jordan, out of North Carolina, born in 1936. Let's go back to all Wikipedia. That even sounds wicked, Wikipedia. And see if they have the right date on here. Let's see. Here we go. So, August 1st, 1936, Wallace, North Carolina. Lovington, North Carolina is where he made his transition, really? Lovington, North Carolina? I don't know if that's right. But anyway, so we're going to go back to his genealogy and see if we got the same thing. Yep, Wallace, 1936, transition, 1993, in Lovington, North Carolina, farm labor farm. His wonderful family, he had a William Edward Jordan was his father. And here's his beautiful wife, Dolores Peoples, and then the man of the hour, Mr. Michael Jordan himself. So I like to save this, not because I'm trying to keep it, but just because I want to look at the names, make sure they're matching up. I know his first wife, beautiful Juanita, was his first wife, and these are three of his children. I believe he got married again after her, but I don't know if he's still married or what's going on, but I do know he got married again. And so going back on that genealogy, see that he's all up in the Carolinas, even in Cherokee County, North Carolina. So we can go back on the Jordan line to a Mr. William Edward Jordan. And I'm just going to go back to here for just a few moments just to make sure they're saying that that was his father. Yep, William Jordan. Rosabelle Jordan was the wife for William Jordan. This is James Jordan parents. So let me go back to him for a moment. Here we go. And so we got him, and we were, confirmed that that's the same Jordan family. Then we're going to keep going back. We have a Dawson Desan Jordan out of North Carolina. So definitely got some good North Carolina roots going on there. Looks like he was a head farmer. Have him as Negro, but even if they had him as white, we know it's just a classification. And then also looks like he lived to be 85. Okay, 85 years young. He married a Clemwood Clemmer. Okay, that's probably a nickname, Clemmer Burns. And then we're going to be able to keep going back. So far, 1862, we're right at the cusp of the end of slavery. Just going to see where we're at. We're going to do a temperature check, see if we see anything about slavery, anything about migration patterns, anything coming from Africa. And so far, we don't. So when he was 8 years old, 1870, that was right at the end of what they're calling the Civil War. Don't see anything about, any slaves or anything like that, at least not at this point. But like I always say, and that's from Jesse Jackson, keep hope alive. We're going to see what we can find. We're seeing more children, as we always see during these times. They, were not they were able to live their life a little bit more freely, and they could have more children, fruitful and multiplying. And then we have Mr. John Jordan out of North Carolina, born about 1830. So at this point, I'm sure we're going to see. Let's see. We have to see, well, that's in 1900. It's amazing that they skipped the other census records and skipped right on to 1900 when he's 70 years young, but that's okay. Oh, okay, he's white. Classification. So there we go. Yeah, this highly melanated Michael Jordan and his highly melanated father. If you go by this narrative, if you don't know any better, you'll think he's a pale face, and he's not. This was a classification. They don't want you to know what was really going on during those times. One child for some reason, not sure what that is. I think they didn't have all the children on here, but he could have just had one child. That's very unusual if he did, because um, looks like he had a lot of boys too. Okay, Mr. Jordan, Mr. Jordan. They had a lot of sons, and I think Michael came from a couple of brothers, if I'm not mistaken. So we're going out of England. We're already in England. Staffordshire, England, 1805. Got married at the Baptist Hells Owen in England. And then looks like, let me see, did I find any slaves? Did I miss them? See, this is my problem. I talk too much. I'm always missing these doggone slaves. Where they at? Let me see. Oh, man, I missed him again. Okay, so I'm going to keep going back to a Thomas Jordan, still out of Staffordshire. He married a Martha Watson. And yes, I did check this Watson line to see if they went to the Watson castle. It wouldn't let me go back too far on this one. So don't know if that's the same Watson lineage. And most of the time it really is. Believe it or not, it really is. It's just another sibling or something may have been attached to this particular Martha, but it wouldn't let me go back far. So I'm going to keep going back to a Thomas Jordan out of Shropshire, England, born in 1728. Still haven't seen the African, haven't seen the migration to Africa or to or from, at least at this point. I know you all are probably thinking these are pale faces. They are not. This is your so called black nobility. This is your so called blackamoors coming up to be determined England, but this is where they were from. We're going to keep going back. And somehow we're in 1687. He married a Johnson. I think I checked her line. She didn't go back. I was trying to see. I always try to match my Johnsons up, but I didn't match her to anybody that I know of, at least in my bloodline that I could find. Not to say that she isn't, but I just haven't found individual as of yet. Takes me back to 1656, Stafford, England. Um, he transitioned pretty young, 44 years old. Probably was in a war during that time. That's probably why he transitioned so early. They usually lived a little bit longer, even in England, the melanated people. So now we have but there was a lot of wars going on. We're talking about this Jacobite period. So now we have an Edward Jordan, um, out of Sussex, England. Keep going back. He married a Mosley. I think I shared it with you about the Mosley. That is definitely my line. The Mosley family. There was an Sir Arthur Mosley. He was the patriarch that came back to the Americas or came to this side of the Americas from wherever England was to be determined. And he was very wealthy out of Virginia. This is the same bloodline from that Mosley family. That Mosley also, once again, going over to the Australia. One of the descendants of the Mosley family was responsible for building Sydney, Australia. So what he did to Sydney, Australia, he and his comrades did to Australia, Sydney, Australia, and that is the most toured state or city in Australia. And it was from an American Negro or Indian, excuse me, Indian royal returnee was the Mosley, that particular John Mosley. Once again, you can look him up. It's called from Virginia Bay to Botany Bay, I believe. And he was known as a black loyalist. But anyway, keep going back on the Jordan line. When 1537, Staffordshire, England, William Jordan Johnsley. Once again, see, I'm not lucky. I don't get it. I keep skipping the African. I don't know if they just missing the boats. They didn't get the memo. They didn't get the smoke signal. They didn't get I don't know. They didn't get the mail. They didn't get the text message. They didn't get the email. Every time I look for an African, I can't find one, and I'm jealous. I don't get it. But anyway, that's the Jordan line. He goes straight back. Not one African that we could see, at least on his father's or paternal line. Not one. So I'm sure, and if we keep going back, believe me, you're going to go into, you're really going to get into these royal lines, these royal bloodlines. This particular website stops at 1500, but there's several other websites that I usually would transition to that will show who this noble line really is. And you can easily do that. You can just do a little search on them and you'll find the Jordan. You can look for the Jordan crest because I guarantee you there's one. You can look for whether it be a manor or a castle or something like that, and then where they came back into the Americas and what particular tribe they, um, that they intermingled with. Of course, I couldn't find them on this particular area, but them being in North Carolina, um, all these great towns of North Carolina, they're in there. I just couldn't find them, at least with on this one. Now, when it comes to his wife, let me just see. Let me do a check because I'm talking and I don't look at the chat and it's terrible.
Well, let me stop you right
Right.
there on that one you just had
Mm-hmm.
on that Jordan
Mm-hmm.
individual. It said General Farm
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
there, indicating
This
that he
one.
was a landlord.
Wait, this one or the
Uh,
one before.
the one you just had before, it said
Okay.
General Farm.
What the heck? It took me. Oh, okay. I know why. Like it took me completely out. What the world? All right, give me a minute. I gotta go back. Mm, go here. This one right here.
Exactly. So you see that General Farm. That means he's the
Mm-hmm.
landlord. He's the landowner.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, right there in North
And they
Carolina.
actually have him as classified as Negro and Black. So at this point, this is where
Open up that
you
census record.
where this one
The
right here.
census record at the top. Yeah, open that up.
Okay.
Zoom in on it.
Yeah.
Zoom in on it. And go down to where the father is the head of family and scroll right across the line and give us more details about
Okay. I think this is him
the
right here.
situation there.
Yeah, this got to be him. What Jordan Head? What is
Right.
R?
Scroll across.
Mm-hmm.
Scroll across
Male,
there.
yep,
Right
Negro,
on
male.
this line.
Mm-hmm. Where it says farming.
Farming. Okay.
Uh-huh.
Yep. General
Yep, general
farm.
farm. Yep.
Yep. Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So yeah,
So
he's
it's
the landlord, the owner there. So which means,
mm-hmm.
that's North Carolina. So those would
Mm-hmm.
be land grants
Mm-hmm.
up under the that particular jurisdiction, 13 colonies. So which means that I'll confirm that later. I'll try to locate the Jordan land grant there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that
Right,
should
because
be
they
there.
wouldn't be in. They're
Yeah.
not in the BLM at all. North
No,
Carolina.
it's North Carolina. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
exactly.
Yeah.
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 So yeah, just wanted to point that out to the family. Yeah.
Yeah, I found that out by trial and error, you all. I didn't know North Carolina when the information first came out. I was looking like crazy for North Carolina. I couldn't find anything. So there are some states that are not part of the Bureau of Land Management. Just in case you all think that you're losing your mind and you can't find anybody when you get to that point. No, there are certain states that are not part of, and North Carolina is one of them. I don't recall. I know Amani knows them all. I don't. I know that one
Well,
because
the
of.
13 colonies. That's a
Hmm.
separate jurisdiction.
Okay.
The BLM is only for the United States federal government's land patents that they issued,
Okay.
right, pursuant to
Hmm.
the Act of 1820, which were cash sales, and then the Homestead Act of 1862. Those are the only
Hmm.
ones that are in their jurisdiction. The Spanish land grants are separate, right?
Okay.
So now so you can find many of those in the other jurisdictions there. Yeah. So, but yeah, go ahead and continue
The-
with your
Oh,
presentation.
okay. Okay, got it. I was gonna say the Spanish would be what? Yeah, Texas and
Yeah, well,
um.
Texas, controlled its own domain, which means land. So
Okay.
Texas is separate; it issued its own. Although, again, I mentioned this previously, Texas did offer to sell its domain.
Mhm.
Domain means land to the United States federal government, uh,
Mhm.
but for $10 million in the United States at that particular time, which they now looking back, they made a huge mistake, but they
Right.
felt $10 million was too much for the public land there in Texas,
Mhm.
and then Texas maintained its own public domain, and they bring in the most revenue per year in sales of oil, gas, and energy.
Wow.
Yeah. Now, of course, you have other
Mhm.
Spanish land grant jurisdictions like outside of Texas, the other like California and all those other Spanish land grants
Mhm.
will fall up under that particular. And of course, the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, you know, after the American Mexican War,
Mhm.
America, pursuant to the terms of that treaty, they must acknowledge all valid Spanish land grants, which is still they're valid. So if you're an heir with
Mhm.
Spanish land grant, you can make claims on those as well.
Wow. That is amazing. Amazing. All right. So now we have Mrs. Jordan. Her name was Dolores Peoples, born in 1941, North Carolina. Married to Mr. James Raymond Jordan, whom we just did the genealogy for. We know this is the same family. We have Mr. Michael Jordan, Larry Donnell Jordan. I always like to click on Michael just to make sure, just so you all know this is the same family. Alrighty, so her family, she was a Peoples. She married a Weeks, and I always confuse Weeks and Meeks. So when I saw, I was like, "Oh, Amani, that's a Meeks," but it's not. It's a Weeks. We have a Reverend Weeks, I believe, here in Chicago, that I keep getting that name mixed up. So that was my bad. All right, so we're going to go back on her lineage to once again the family. Definitely some North Carolinas. They born and raised there, very loyal to that state. It's a great state. A lot of great people come up out of North Carolina, I gotta say. Some of the best singers, some of the best dancers, some of the best sports people, just in general, come up out of North Carolina. North Carolina got it going on now. All right, so then her family, Mr. Joe Peoples, says great migration. They're talking about the people. Oh, Did he fight in the military? But they're talking about the people that during this time they were leaving the South. They didn't leave. They stayed. They stayed put. They were some real engines. They stayed put down there. Not to say that the ones that left were not, but but they did stay for at least. Well, they did go to New York for a little while, but they did come back. Now, her family, same thing. I don't know if she really was a Parker. This particular individual, Joe People. I'm sorry, his family, because he took on his mother's. His mother was Peoples. The father was Parker, so I don't know if that was his biological father or not, or he just took on his mom's name for whatever the reason. But we're gonna keep going back on her line because that's the Peoples line to see how far it'll take me back. We're in Orange County. We know Orange is the Stewart family, the little sneaky Stewart family. That's the Orange County. Anytime you see orange, you think of Stewart. So that line, I wasn't able to go back completely. I went back as far as 1850 on the People's line, and then the Parker. If he is a Parker, he was a Parker. Wasn't able to go back at all on his line. But we do know the Parkers just from some of the Parker lines come from uh, to be determined England. They come from Ireland, as a matter of fact, through Barbados. And then one of the Parkers, if I'm not mistaken, it was one of those Parkers. He's a Parker or Field that was a what do you call it? Astronomy. Very renowned. I forgot to mention that when I was doing Vanessa Williams, her genealogy, because her ancestor was either a Parker or it might have been a Fields. Very, very, very renowned individual. He was into astrology and I mean, he was very well respected during that time, 1600s. And again, she's another one that happened to get on a slave ship before she went to go see her ancestor that's very renowned as an astrologist. That's how those things work sometimes. But anyway, so I wasn't able to go back as far as I would like to. But even out though I'm on in 1850, still haven't seen anything because right here, honestly, guys, it would show the migration right here of them coming from a different country or or having roots in a different country. It doesn't show it. So normally, even that's 1850, we're still talking about the cusp of so-called revolution. I'm sorry, civil war. Don't see anything. We just see a lot of alleged engines as well as returnees. So I was able, because I wasn't able to go back, what I did is I looked at one of his grandmothers through this people's line. So this particular one, which would be a grandmother, I think third grandmother, third to fourth grandmother out of North Carolina as well. She had a rich um, genealogy. Not so much because I'm seeing Indians, because again, they try to hide. They hide. I don't know, for some reason. Not so much myself when I do my genealogy. I usually run into at least one Indian. I'm having a little difficult time with some of these celebrities finding the Indian per se, but because I'm familiar with the names and a lot of these territories, I know that these were American Indians and returnees as well. Interesting names. Here we go with all these children. That's another good sign that these were major landowners when you see this many children. I thought that was interesting. And I didn't go back on that line because I don't know. Richard Nixon got me feeling some kind of way about that name, so I didn't go back. But you will see this name a lot as far as in royalty, at least for myself. Now, once I get to the McClammy family, I can already tell you this is probably going to be. Oh, it does say black, which again was a misnomer. But we're looking at 1855. Don't see any signs or anything like that he came from slavery. But he does have that nice Irish name. So we're just going to see if we can keep going back on that name, him and all these children. So Daniel McClammy out of North Carolina, Pender, 1817. Farm labor. Let's see. Still a melanated individual. At least it says it as black. Again, I know I always have to catch myself. That is a misnomer. We do see that he owned his own farm, 1817. I don't know. I don't know how this quote unquote slave became a farm. I don't know how that happened, but 1817 doesn't say anything about slavery. So, yeah, that whole part. All right. So then we're going to keep going back to Mr. Burrell McClammy out of North Carolina, 1788. I got nope, still ain't seen. I'm not seeing a slave. What is going on? 1788, New Hanover County, North Carolina. It must be Hanover. I don't know. Well, was going to say because we got a Hanover Park here in Illinois. His family was Mark Lafayette McClammy, and then he lived in the British colony of New Hanover, North Carolina, British colony. So his parents were Thomas McClammy and Mary Manlove. Once again, wonderful children. We have a Mark, Matthew. We got Mark and Matthew. You better go ahead, New Testament, Mark and Matthew. Then we also have Daniel, the Old Testament, Rebecca, Old Testament, Zilpha, Old Testament, Sarah, Old Testament, Mary. I'm saying it not because of I just try to put the correlation so you all could see how embedded these names are and who mostly carried these names throughout the years. More recently, we see more pale people carrying it, but just in general, it was mostly our people. But these are actually Algonquin names. All right, that's older than the Hebrewic name, but I just like to mention them just because people can sort of make the correlation. From there, we have a Thomas McClammy, married a Catherine Bishop. I think I went back on this line, but isn't it Jamie Foxx? I think his last name is Bishop. Wishing him well. I don't know what's going on with Jamie. Love him dearly. Hopefully, he is well or going through his recovery. But I believe this line goes all the way back. But I don't want to go back. Let me do this. I'm gonna keep going back on the McClammy line. But as you see, these are really good lines to be a part of. Bishop is a wonderful name. McClammy is a good line to keep going back on. Owen, we're in Ireland, through coming from Ireland to Maryland. This was one of the first patriarchs to come from wherever that territory was, back to North America. And then it goes into a John McClammy. Also, with this particular line, there was somebody, what was it? I wrote it down. What did I do with it? So McClammy, I want to keep going back. I want to backtrack on somebody on here. So we went from McClammy to Bishop. So the Bishop line is where I want to go back to. So on that line, it's going to take me to some people that I know are indigenous or at least have indigenous or aboriginal connections. And I find that through the Bishop line. So again, Johnny, I believe, what's his name? Jamie Foxx was his real last name was Bishop. Hopefully, as he's going through his recovery, some of his family will do their genealogy and find out who he may really be related to. On this line, we have the Bishop, the Normans, um, out of I think that was Scotland. The Normans. That's a very royal line. Very. We have the Richard Bishop, also married to a Clark. Someone had asked me about the Clark family. That's part of that Clark family as well. Married into the Clark family, the Bishop family. When you start seeing Bishop Clarks, you better know you're gonna see some royalty. And here we go. Clark is married to let me see, Richard Bishop is married to Alice Clark, and then here we go into the nobility on still on the Bishop side. From that line, we go into a Thomas Robert. He has a Manor. He's a bishop, as well. And then let's see, he married into Marjorie the Gray family. Once again, I love Lady Gray. Shout out to the Gray family and the McNabb family. You know who you are. They are related. This is part of that family, Lady Gray. And then married into the Bishop family. Also, a part of that line was the Baldwin family. I don't know if I skipped that one already, but Baldwin comes back, part of the loyal royal family. And then right here, we're going to see John Thomas Clark married into the Cook family. Talked about him before, Sir Francis Cook. This is the same people, the same bloodline. These were all melanated people. Don't get it, twisted and think, oh, these were all pale faces. They were not. These were all melanated people, every last one of them. John Richard Clark, this is his father was John Clark, and then he married into the Sweat family, who were also part of the Upton family. So when we get to the Clark family, I thought I was able to go back on this one. But anyway, I do know that this Clark family, just looking at some of the names I'm very familiar with, this would have been Clarks that married into the Stewart line. A lot of these Clarks and these Stewarts and these Cooks, they married into each other's lines. A lot of them did. We have the Carter family, also a royal line. And then let me see, Cook. Here we go. So we have Lord John Carew Cook, Anthony Knight Bath. That would have been Sharif and not Sheriff. He was a cook and he was a tutor to King Edward VI. Again, all of these people come back. They come back into their indigenous, Aboriginal, Indian tribes. Don't believe the narrative that they just raped their way into that. No, they came back home to their family members, to their loved ones. And again, this is what's his name? Michael Jordan's African, so-called African American family that happened to be knights and lords and tutors to kings and things of that nature. So yeah, that's how that worked out for him. And then also we have a Alice Maria Carter. Her father was the Brown family. Go that Brown family. We know the Brown family comes back and they become part of several tribes, several uh, Aboriginal tribes. We have the Neville family. I talk about them all the time, lovingly. And then we also have the Overton family. So once again, I'm still trying to find a slave. I don't know how these people get so lucky and they find Africans, which would allow them to have access to cobalt and gold and things of that nature. But we can't seem to find the same people. We find in Plantagens, we're finding lords and Sharifs. And look at this, we're having to stumble upon the Seymour family, Edmund Duke. I don't know what we're doing wrong, Amani, but we need to get it together because we're finding barons and stuff. I don't know what are we doing wrong. What do you think we're doing wrong, Amani? I don't get it.
Well, maybe we just need to, just keep grinding. We'll come across it. If it takes the next 30 years, we're going to come across it.
Oh God, it can't take that. You think it'll take that long? Gosh.
Yeah.
Alrighty. So anyway, so that's where we're at. We're with the Plantagens, as someone just mentioned. We're with the Royals. All of these families go back, and I did write down some of the other families. We have a Thomas that was part all through that McClammy. So it went to the West. I already talked about the West family. Tredegar Baron that goes all the way back to the 1500s comes back home, part of the Pamunkey tribe, as well as other indigenous Aboriginal tribes. We have the Thomas Wells family. We have Joan Fitzgerald. I think she was a queen or something. I forget what she was. We have James Earl. Excuse me. Let me say that again. We have.
Are you?
I'm
You're
not.
not
I'm not
sure.
sharing. And I wrote this down because I didn't. I don't want to go
Okay.
back. So then we have Earl James Butler. Any Butlers that play basketball? I think there's at least one that's very renowned. And then we also have the McBrien family. All of these families are connected. Every last one of these bloodlines come back home and they are part of Aboriginal indigenous tribes as well. So yeah, that I don't know the Africans that we try to find, we can't find them for whatever the reason. Maybe because they just really don't exist. So, alrighty. Alrighty. So that was that. I don't know what you want me to do. You want me to go with Bass Reeves now?
Yes.
Okay.
Make declarations.
Alrighty.
Let's do words.
So anybody ever heard of Bass Reeves before? Anybody know who he is? All right. So Bass Reeves
Well, you have to
was
remind them. We
oh,
introduce him.
okay. Yeah, I wanted to. I was reading the
We
chat.
think
I'm
we
sorry.
introduce him. Put the
All
respect
right.
on his name.
So Bass Reeves was I think we should. I think we should put some respect on Mr. Reeves' name. But he was out of very renowned individual called the Lone Ranger that was loosely based on his losing a battle, if you will, catching everyone that he was chasing. And, he was a very, very well respected individual throughout his life. And once again, one of our own. One of the ones that they tried to whitewash and try to erase his history and try to pretend that he was something that he was not, but he definitely was one of ours. Um, Let's see. So anyway, let me bring his information over. It's still spinning for some reason. Don't know why. Let's see if it'll let me bring it over there. Alrighty. Here he is. So right away. So we see Mr. Bass Reeves, born in 1838, Crawford County, Arkansas. He got married. This I think was his second wife. Yeah, it had to be the second wife. 1900 Muskogee, Oklahoma. And then he transitioned January 12th to 1910 Muskogee. He was a farm laborer. Right here, we see that he was a U.S. Deputy Marshal. There was none like him before and none like him since. He was just all of that in the bag of chips. He was just amazing. Out of the Muskogee, Oklahoma, he was in Muskogee Territory. So once again, Oklahoma, just in general, was housed at first for just for Indians. That was Indian territory. All of Oklahoma was Indian territory. It was carved out of Texas, and then also there, I think it was 50 towns that they at least admitted to in Oklahoma, and they said all 50 towns were melanated towns. Every last one of them. They said they had the highest rate of so-called Negro, so-called black towns in America. Just so happened to be in Indian territory. How ironic is that? All right. So anyway, the interesting thing about Mr. Reeves was his mother's name. Let's see. Wasn't no, this is not what I have. I have something different for her. But anyway, her last name was Reeves. I don't know why they have Washington here. But her last name was Reeves. His father's name was Stewart. So that sort of I wasn't looking for this information. Yes, here we go. So Paralee Washington Gaultier Reeves. That was his mother's name. Father's name was Stewart. So I thought, now why would they change the father? Why would they do that? But now, at the time, this was so new to me. I didn't realize this was going on. People were doing this stuff, especially our people. But for whatever reason, he went by the mother's last name and not the father. So this is his father. They won't release the first name, but I'm assuming it's either John, like this one, or it could be James. And there's a reason why. So when I go back on his name, I have Mr. John Clark Stewart out of North Carolina, my favorite state, as I always say. Born 1781 in March. Transition, he was 103 years young. Oh my gosh, they had it really bad back then. They was living to be 103 as slaves. Oh my God. Okay, all these wonderful children. Here we go with the I'm gonna say one, two. I'm just gonna count these. One, two, three. Sometimes they will double up on the children. They may have the children on here twice, so be a little careful with that. But for the most part, these were all their children, and they had this usually with one wife, usually no more than two. But most of the time, it's just one wife, one spouse. All right. So his father was Mr. Hamilton Stewart. It's interesting. He had two good names, Hamilton and Stewart, out of North Carolina in the British colonies. His father, I'm sorry, he married a Elizabeth Bledsoe. Not too familiar with her name, but I'm sure it's a great name as well. Going to keep going back to the Stewart family. They're now this one comes up out of Delaware. 1735, Sussex, and they end up in Rowan County. That's a good county to be up in. All right, and then they end up there in 1760, transition at 1802. Family was Samuel P. Stewart out of Delaware as well, between 1688 or 1700. So they're not exactly sure when he was born, but they'll give an idea, range of when he may have been born. He had a son that was Colonel David Stewart. Let me see. He probably fought in the he could have fought in the Revolutionary War. I always get those wars mixed up. Charge it to my head, not my heart. All right. So he married a Harrison family. I already know Harrison and the Harris and all of those people. Look at that. They were definitely returnees, and they actually was part. The Harrison family was part of several indigenous tribes. Once again, we see Jemima. If a melanated person could show me that they had children named Jemima in the 1700s, then I'll believe every last one of these children, I'm sorry, non-melanated people. If they could show me that they had these kind of names back then I'll believe that these were pale-faced. They absolutely did not. We already know that they took Jemima out of the store because it was quote unquote offensive. So no. Keziah is another one. Reuben, like Reuben Stewart, Stewart, Stewart. Those are our names. These are all of our Algonquin, Aboriginal, autochthonous, Hebrewic names. These are our family. All right. So then that keeps going back to a Mr. Samuel Stewart out of Delaware. Okay, we already did that one, and then we're gonna go back to we're in Queens, New York, 1689. Um, let's see. He married a McKinney, and McKinney. I think we got a McKinney here. Some a school. I think here in Chicago called McKinney. But anyway, keep going back to look at this. Now we're getting into the royal stewards. Now we're talking about Bass Reeves. Bass Reeves. This is his father. The mother's last name was Reeves. That was the trickery. This is what these stewards are known for. They are notorious for switching out their names. All right, so we're gonna keep going back, and now we're at Knight. Alexander Earl Murray Stewart, 1634, Edinburgh. I think that's the one that Amani said was in Nova Scotia. And then we have his parents, which was Margaret Margaretha. That's where my name came. I never knew this, but I heard people say, your name means Margaret because they took the mark off of Aretha and it became just Aretha without the mark. But my name actually means Margaret. And I found that out doing genealogy. I didn't know that. All right. Although I was told that by most people that were of Latin origin, they said they would call me Arita, but they said my name should have been Margarita. And I didn't know what the heck they were talking about. Now I know. All right. So now we go into James Thomas Stewart, Earl of Moray, uh, Scotland. He had a castle. And this is that Royal Stewart line. And we end up here with Lord James Stewart, Earl Moray Doon Abernathy Bonnie. And I know several people in the chat are also related to this Stewart line. You are all royal. This is why they have to push you all out to Africa. In this line, we have the Houston family. We have the Lyon family. We have, oh, look, see, it won't let me because I didn't save them. So now it won't let me see it because I didn't save this individual. So they're going to show me something totally different. We have the Lennox family, Lennox Mall in Georgia. This is where that name comes from. We have the Huntley family. Who else did I see in here? Campbell. I know I saw Campbell. But again, when you see Campbell, I know I saw Campbell. What did I see Campbell? Here it is. When you see Campbell, you're gonna always see Stewart. Somewhere the Campbell and the Stewarts, they must have been Ace Boone Coons back in the day. So usually well, not always, but most of the time, whenever you see, especially when you get into this royal part of the lineage of the Stewart family, you're gonna find a Campbell peeking out his or her beautiful head, just to let you know they're part of the fold as well. So, and again, this is the trickery or the things that we have to be cognizant of. A lot of these people, their last names may not have been, they took on the maternal line instead of the paternal line, or they may have dropped things in their name. Like I remember Halle Berry, it should have been Bunbury. They dropped the bun, could have been part of that Jacobite. This family right here is the one that caused all of that. They could have been part of that Jacobite rebellion. So but yes, so that look at this, James V, King Stuart, King of Scots. The Erskine family is very close to the Erskine Campbell. Scots, I'm sorry, Stuart family, Erskine and Campbell. These three, you're gonna always see them part of this Stuart family. I'm sorry, these two. And what was the other one? Douglas family, you're gonna always see part of the Stuart family. It's a lot of them. It's a lot. And most of us, we come from this. This is where we come from. This is our true lineage. And I'm going to just cry out to anyone that has the desire to go to Africa. Why would you leave your royal bloodline as well as your Aboriginal roots for those that stayed here to go to a barren land? Why would you do that? Based on a lie. So we got to get wiser about the choices that we're making when it comes to our lineage and believing people have our best interests in mind, and they don't. They do not. And that's but again, that Stewart line does come back. they high upon among multiple tribes. In my mind, I honestly think the head of the Powhatan Nation was a Stewart, because steward does mean keeper of the records, keeper of the. I remember in church they used to always say, "Well, God's not going to trust you because you're not a good steward with your money." Didn't know what that meant back then, but they always said that you got to be a good steward. You have to be a good steward. Well, steward has substance behind it. Also, I was told, well, actually you can look this up yourself. They say that Queen Elizabeth was a steward. Her She's supposed to be not the fake one. We just need the name. So she was Queen. The real Queen Elizabeth was a direct descendant of King Henry VIII. King Henry VIII was a direct descendant, allegedly, of one of those pharaohs. So he would have been a steward as well. So these stewards are they're major. So they had to have some kind of importance. I mean, people will disagree with me as far as the Chiefs, and I get it, but it's got to be something. How are they ended up back over here like that? But I think that one of those stewards was hiding, and at least one of those Chiefs hiding with with the Chiefs somewhere. But that's just my that may not be something Amani agrees with. That's just my analogy. Alrighty, all right, Amani.
Okay, great.
Hmm.
Presentation there. Appreciate that there. Um, yeah, so I will. Let me. Am I loud and clear or am I muffled? Testing. Mic check. Mic check.
You're fine. You're fine. You're
Fine.
fine.
Okay. Okay. All right. So, um, thanks a lot, there, Johnson. Appreciate that. And in that same tone, we're going to continue with Ross's and Stewart, and a very famous Ross. I want to kind of share with the family here. Um, and I'm going to cover a couple of them here. But we're going to start out with this here. Let me share my screen. Let's be, I'm noticing the chat here. We're kind of
I
getting
was just about to say that. I just happened
creative
to look over
diversions and,
here.
and, and
I think
distractions in
PNF
the
has.
chat
I think
family.
PNF has some questions about
So let's,
the. Yeah.
yeah, well, let's just pay attention here in class. We don't need to go off, out of scope here. Let's stay focused and be respectful. That's what it's all about. Anyone any questions? You address the questions to me or Eris afterwards via email or something. Contact us directly since we're presenting the information. All right, so here we go here. Frederick Ross. No, no, excuse me. Let me back up. What am I doing here? Let me back up. Let me back up here. Getting way ahead of myself. Fred Earl Ross. Okay. Am I screen sharing? You can see that, Aretha?
Yes, I can. Yep.
Okay.
And you're clear too.
Awesome. All right. Let's keep here. Make sure everything is visible. All right. So, Fred Earl Ross. He's born 1920 in Bluefield, Mercer, West Virginia. He has a famous daughter. Okay. His daughter, father of Diana Ross. Okay. Diana Ross. Um, so she has a very illustrious Ross line. We're going to get into here before we get into our main individual. So yeah, Fred Earl Ross. We'll start with him. Now on this particular platform here, family, so we can get to his father, which is William Earl Edward Ross, here, born 1880 in Tennessee. And then we can also get to his father, Frederick Ross, born 1853, also in Tennessee. Now, on this particular platform, they stop here. Okay. which is the reason for that. A lot of people, again, they don't want to give up too much about this particular Ross family, but we will go over to archives and we'll start from Diana Ross's father, again, on this particular platform, archives. And so we will click on view his story. All right, we see 1920, Bluefield, Mercer County, West Virginia. And he moved to Detroit, Michigan, married in 1942. And of course, he had his, Diana was born in 1944. And then down here, his children, Arthur and Diane Ernestine Earl Ross, right, his famous daughter. But now his father, again, William Edward Ross, again, 1880, Tennessee. We saw that there on a wiki tree. And we go down further. His father, Frederick A. Ross, which on wiki tree, they stop here. They don't go beyond this, right? But fortunately, archives does. And we get to Frederick Augustus Ross, born 1796, Virginia. And he was the one who left Virginia into Tennessee. Okay, let's continue down the line here. Now it's interesting. See, Diana Ross's paternal Ross line, a lot of clergymen, ministers, men of the gospel, right? So let's continue because this is going to be important. Men of the gospel, clergymen, okay, and we can continue down the line. There's David John Hollingsworth Ross, and he's born off 1742, Winchester, Frederick, Virginia. All right, he married there in Virginia, and he ascended in Henrico, Virginia, 1803. And we can continue going down. John Ross, born 1713, New Garden, Chester, Pennsylvania. Now, look at this here. He married. He was affiliated with the Society of Friends in Maryland. Okay. He did a lot of, men of the gospel, and they traveled, promoting the gospel in many different places. And his father's Alexander Ross. Inveresk, Midlothian, Scotland, Queen Skoda area, 1682. Nowhere in Africa yet, family, unfortunately. And we can continue going down the Ross line. His father's William Ross. Same location, Queen Skoda land, 1658. He died 1693. And then we can continue going down the Ross line to John Ross, Diana Ross's paternal line, 1637, Skoda. And then he came 1675, Massachusetts Bay Colony. He came over, was John Ross. Okay. And then his father is Robert Ross. Now his mother's a McLeod, right? That's another illustrious name there. But we're going to stay on the Ross line. Get to his father, Robert Alexander Ross, born 1608, Glasgow, Skoda, land of Queen Skoda. And married 1561 and died 1694. Still nothing Africa about her at all. Peter Ross, keep going down. Queen of Skoda land there, 1575. And we can continue going down. James Ross, Lord James Ross, that is. 1556, since Queen of Skoda territory, died 1582. in Skoda, and we can continue further. Robert Ross, 1515, still right there in Skoda land, and still not done. Baron Ninian Ross, Hawkhead, all the way back to 1501. There it is, family. So Diana Ross's paternal line, very, very illustrious, right? So again, we understand that the spell cast on, the world, was recent, but we're breaking these spells here. And these Rosses are infamous in America, all of the Americas, and they're just one shared family that's in there in many locations, right? So, and of course, they were um, part of the line, the side of the Stuart line there, um, as well, protecting that royal kingship line there. So we're going to get into one of the most infamous Ross families, and it's you see the thumbnail, family. You see the infamous thumbnail. Many people gave their interpretations of Araminta Ross Stewart. This would be my first interpretation. And, honors to all those who gave their presentations. It was, very beneficial information that they all presented, and honors to them. Um, and, I actually, went on her um, line a few years ago, and I had it written down, and had always promised myself that I would give my interpretation of Araminta Ross, aka Harriet Tubman, which, to make it more understandable to the family, think of Harriet Tubman as a stage name, just a character, just a stage name, with a narrative created around that particular character. And we know what a narrative means, a story of fiction. So we're going to separate. I'm not talking about the script character Harriet Tubman. We're going to deal with Araminta Ross Stewart. And I'm going to focus mainly on her father. Okay, I'm going to focus on him. But when we'll start here. Um, so on archives, now again, genealogical warfare. What does that mean exactly? Why do I give these particular focus in a series dedicated to genealogical warfare? Well, family, we are at war. We've been at war, and the most valuable resource is not gold, cobalt, gas, and energy. The most valuable resource when it comes to us in North America, resource pertains to our genealogical records. That's the most valuable resource, because those records tie to title, land title, and it's all about the land, as I will continue to repeat. For the opponent or the enemy to get at law what's called a controlling interest in the land, they must detach the heirs. And so they did that by reconstructing our records, our genealogical records. So under that umbrella of genealogical records, you have census records, birth records, death records, marriage records, land records, etc. So now it's understandable why the opponent's whole countermeasure to separate us was them investing heavily into us being from somewhere else. Because if they can, you know, pull that off and then mentally and then re-educate them, control information that's inputted into the minds of their children will never know that they are heirs of the land that's right up under their feet. So that's what's going on. It's chess, not checkers. But now, so we have to be fully cognizant or aware of the strategy that the opponent is using against us in order to defeat their strategy. Okay? So that's why they invest hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars into having, institutions with agents that are sent amongst us, to keep us, in darkness. So, Araminta Ross' father is Benjamin Ross Stewart. Now, they have to hide the Stewart, take that away, so to make you won't find out the truth. Now, we're gonna get into this. This is just part one today. We're gonna have a part two and get into the Stewarts more deeply and the history of all of that. But we're gonna segue and bridge ourselves into that subsequent deep dive with the bridge we're going to create today in the last remaining minutes before we close out. So Benjamin and Ross here, family. As you can see on archives, witness the spell. Click on here. We click on now. Before we click on view his story, so look at this. So we have the name Benjamin Ross, born around 1790, Dorchester County, Maryland. Death date 1871, and of course, death place Cayuga County, New York, where his daughter Araminta Ross was actually located as well. All right, buried in the Fort Hill Cemetery. Now, birthplace. What does it say? It says Dorchester County, Maryland, America. But when you click on view his story, we're getting into the spell casting. Benjamin Ross, born 1790, Kumasi, Ashanti, Ghana. You see, they will immediately throw you off and put this in there. He's born in Ghana in 1790. But yet, I'm gonna show census records of Benjamin Ross Stewart. And just to make it clear for the family, because I repeat this many times, but we're gonna show it again here. Because with history's your left leg, law's the right leg. They're inseparable. You must apply the law to history to uncover the truth. All right, now, I just took a screenshot of the Naturalization Act. I must keep repeating this. Section 7. And be it further enacted that the naturalization laws are hereby extended to aliens of African nativity and to persons of African descent. Approved July 14th, 1870. You know why they have what's called a so-called genealogical brick wall 1870 for people like us? When people say, oh yeah, you can't go beyond 1870. What? Because these witches and warlocks in the 1930s and 40s, when they were reconstructing our ancestors' records and had to hijack the class that our ancestors had. This is why they do this, because of this. Now, of course, many of us have records pre-1870 with our ancestors on there. Family. No persons or aliens of African nativity or persons of African descent they could not have become American citizens. They were not allowed to be citizens in America. Here, let me pull this up. Let me pull this up here. Because this is how you can easily um, break these spells from these sources, witches and warlocks. Let me pull up the file. Okay. Here. Okay, 1850 census, Benjamin Ross. Now, we just read the law, right? What did the law say? It says, aliens of African nativity and persons of African descent were only allowed to become citizens after 1870. So if you have an ancestor on any census record or marriage record pre-1870, means they were American citizens. They could not have been of African nativity or African descent. So here's the 1850 census. You pull this up here. You go to the top. What does it say here? Free inhabitants. Territory of Maryland. Okay. And then, of course, his daughter, Araminta Ross Stewart, she's born around 1825. She's a young lady at this time, and she's not in her father's household. She's married. All right. And he will be right here, Benjamin Ross. They have him 60 years old, and of course they put the pejorative B here. But here he is, free inhabitant in 1850, on a United American census, which means he's a citizen. He could not been of African descent or African nativity. All right. So, and then continuing down that path. Now, as we saw, now let's go back. Let's go back here because we're going to juxtapose. When we're looking at the archives, our archives have him from here, Kumasi, Ashanti, Ghana. All right, which is a total, it's just a spell. All right. So let me pull this screenshot up here just to juxtapose it and dispute that. You look at this here. So I took a screenshot of this here. Let's blow it up. Okay. We see here Benjamin Ross, birthplace Dorchester County, Maryland. Okay. Not Ghana, Maryland. And we know he couldn't have been for Ghana because he couldn't have been a citizen. Once we apply the law to make it complete, it's easily understandable. You can easily break those spells. It empowers you. You have power now to break their spells. And of course, we find them here, same place, Cayuga County, New York, same place his daughter was, there. Okay? And we can look at the next screenshot here. Benjamin Ross Stewart. So I took a screenshot here, family, off of WikiTree stuff just to see, because when you actually put it in there, you can't get the information. But look at this. Ben Ross Stewart. Ross is his middle name. He's a Stewart. Formerly born in 1790, Dorchester County, Maryland. Son of Martin Ross Stewart. And up here, William Henry Ross Stewart. This is Benjamin's son, one of his sons. See that? His father, Benjamin Ross. That's his father. We go to the next screenshot. Show the family here. And we have John Robert Ross Stewart, Benjamin's other son. So they're Stewarts, family. And we're going to get deep in part two of this about the Stewarts. Jacobites, protector of King James, Yaqub, right? So, and let's show this other screenshot here. And I just double down again that he's born in Dorchester County, Maryland. All right. Now, so now I'm going to show this other census I pulled up him. And this particular census, he's actually listed as Benjamin Stewart. But before we just go to 1865, because we saw on the previous screenshot that he moved up to New York late in age. And here's the 1865 New York State Census, where he's Benjamin Stewart. Okay. Right here. Right there. Benjamin Stewart. Of course, 1860, he was born around 1790. So here he's 70 years old, up in age. And they have B. Just blow it up so everyone's clear here. Right there. Benjamin Stewart. B. Pejorative, meaning he's dark complected. And birthplace, Maryland. So this is Benjamin Ross Stewart on the 1865 New York State Census. And then we go to the 1870 census. He's also listed as Benjamin Stewart. And we see here, let's go up to the top, late in age, town of, what is that? Fleming, New York. Okay, let's go down and find him on here. Let's see. Yeah, right here. So with this wife, Riddy Stewart and Benjamin Stewart, they're 80 at this time. So he's here up in age here in New York, listed as Stewart, his real last name. Right? And then I want to quickly show this little documentary on Lord Benjamin Ross Stewart. Lord, because he was a major landlord. And this documentary, they discovered his land in Dorchester, Maryland. These archaeologists, right? And they say some very interesting things. Let me share this with the family here. Okay. Now, what I'm going to do here, I need you to work with me together here, family, just to make sure our sound quality is good. So to make sure the family can hear. So I'm just going to put something up on YouTube. And let's see here. Let's go with this here. Let me know if you can hear this, family. Can everyone hear that clearly? Hold on. Put a 1 in the chat if you can hear that. Is it loud and clear? Put a 1 in the chat. Oh, hold on.
See, I can hear it on my end, but I don't know how loud it is coming through the
Yeah,
chat.
hold on. Let me know if you can hear Tucker Carlson.
Oh, they said they can.
They can hear him? Okay, perfect. Okay. Okay, so let's go to this documentary. Let me blow it up here. And this is fascinating, family. Hold on, here we go.
It is low. Lisa was saying to close your mic.
Close my mic. Okay, hold on. Okay, here we go again. Let me know. Put a one in the chat if you can hear that. Let me know. Can they hear that, Aretha? I'm not looking at the chat, so I can, let me know. I need you to be my eyes here.
So far, it hasn't updated on my end. It just says one, and then above that it says it's low. Uh, okay, they're saying one, so I'm gonna mute.
Let's start it again. Start it again. Hold on. Hold on. Hold on. Hold on. Hold on. Oh wow. Hold on, family. My computer is now acting up. It's just going. Hold on a second here.
What is it doing? Yeah.
Wow, look at that cursor mouse there, moving by itself. I'm not even touching it. See, it's moving by itself. I'm not
It's
even
moving by
touching.
itself. You need me to get some
Yes.
oil or some sage? What you need me to do? I got them both. Amani, since you're on a he's gone. Okay. Okay, I think he left for a moment. So real quick, while he's trying to get his mic and everything fixed, let me just show you my Bryant family. This is my how I got to this whole connection with the royals and the aboriginals or Indians, if you will, as well as the melanated people here in the Americas. This wasn't a farce for me. This wasn't something that I decided to make up. I wasn't even expecting to run into this. But what happened was my great grandmother, her name was Martha Bryant, and she married a Hall. So this is her family lineage right here. She's from Tyrell County, North Carolina. I pulled it up from here because if I go back too far, it won't let me pull this back up. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. She, her, one of her great grandparents is very notable family, Cyprian Goodman. There's a picture of an old gentleman with very dark color, and he has light colored eyes. That's the Cyprian Goodman that my family comes from. That's his brother. The guys that's on the picture, I think his name was John Goodman, I believe, but that's Cyprian Goodman's brother. Heavily melanated individual. Most pale people have claimed the Goodman family as their own. They were not so-called white people. They were all melanated people. They also have him as a slaveholder. He actually was part. He was his children were apprentices of his. So this is one of my great grandfathers. This is my grandmother, Bridget Bryan. If you look at the children, they have them down as all different nationalities. They have mulatto chestnut color, they have let me see, mulatto. They even have some as black and they have some as Negro. Now this is that Bryant family that took me down, that made me fall down this rabbit hole. So going to Bridget Bryan, um, her name was Cecilia Bridget Bryan. And once we get to a certain lines, we'll see that the T comes off and it becomes Brian in a lot of cases. But Brian and Bryant are the same exact people. 1750 North Carolina. She died in 1788. This was her parents, Needham Bryant and Charlotte Moore. So I'm thinking I'm just going down the Bryant family. Didn't think too much of it. Kept going back. I see a Needham Bryant again. But when they're showing Snowfield Plantation, I'm like, okay, I never heard of that. Where is that at? But what happened was initially when I first clicked on this ancestor's name, there was a crown around her name, and I don't know if it was on this website or it might have been Ancestry. And I thought, now that's weird. Why would she have a crown around her name? So, oh, you know what? Somebody just asked me about Jernigan. I didn't even know that was in my ancestry. So Jernigan is here, and then she's going to go back to what is allegedly France, nobility. So I'm going to go back to for a moment to Needham Bryant. The Bryant gentlemen were very, very astute. They were about the business. They were they were fighters, if you will. They didn't play. It also ties into my Smith family. So these are the same bloodlines right here. Let me go back to the chat. Make sure you guys can hear me. Oh, I'm not sharing my. Oh my gosh. Okay, let me go back. uh, okay. I'm sorry about that. I'm so sorry about that. I apologize. Alrighty. You know what? Amani's not here, so I can't even share my screen. Alrighty. So once again, once when he comes back, hopefully I'll be able to share it. But yeah, he has to do something on his end for it to completely complete sharing. Um, but anyway, so when I go back to Nita Colonel Nita Bryant, I'm going to say it. I know you all can't see what I'm saying, see what I'm looking at. I keep going back, and it goes back to another Needham Bryant. It was three of them. They were they were no joke. I'm telling you, these guys were no joke. And then Needham Bryant, his father was William Bryant. In some instances, he's referred to as King William Bryant. In some instances, he's just William Bryant. And then going back, let me make sure I'm gonna go do a make sure you guys can hear me still. Okay, good. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. All right, so I'm gonna keep going back. I wish you guys could see this. That's when I got to that William Smith Bryan, Prince William, Ireland. So in some cases it says it's him, and then some places it says it's his son or something. But anyway, going through that Bryan lineage is where I stumbled across of Sir Francis Bryan. Stumbling across Sir Francis Bryan is where I brought up Wahaganachi of the Powhatan tribe. That's when I got freaked out. I'm like, what is going on here? How are these Bryans showing up under Powhatan Nation? That didn't make sense to me. So I kept looking, and I'm like, I'm literally shook. I didn't know what to think. I'm like, how is this? What is going on here? So then I started looking at the children. So, gosh, I wish you guys could see what I'm saying, because you all, this is so important. You can take down these names. But under these names of the Bryan, Wahaganachi Bryan, we have a Jane Kaoki, the Powhatan Indian Jane Rolfe, who was the daughter of the infamous Pocahontas, Matoka Rebecca, and then her first husband, Kokum Patawamek, and they call him the warrior. So that's how the Jane came into fruition. So under that family came the Pettis family, the Meese, M as in Mary, E as in Echo, E as in Echo, S as in Sam, E. The Meese family comes up out of this union. Again, that's between Jane Kaoki and Wahaganachi Arroya. That's a family as well. Arroyah. Also, what comes up out of that family, I'm so sorry you all can't see this, but the Crosley family, C is in Charlie, R is in Robert, O, S is in Sam, L is in Larry, E, Y is in yellow, comes up out of that family. Also, we have I said the Pettis family. This is where the Hughes family comes up out of. H, U, G is in George, H is in Henry, E is in Echo, S is in Sam. The Powell family comes up out of here. There's a Chief Powell that comes up out of here. That's P as in Paul, Owell. And then also the Martin family. All of these families are part of the Powhatan Nation. They also have royal lineage going back to wherever England is. Again, I always like Amani. He says to be determined. I agree with him, because we don't know at this point where anything was. Let me go back to the chat. Make sure you all can hear me. I can't share because Corinne, because Amani's having problem with his computer. So he logged out. He has to allow me to share. I mean, I'm sharing, but you all can't see it on it. He has to do something on his end, and he's not here. Um all right, so then we're going back to the Jane Kaoki. Again, this is Pocahontas' daughter with her first husband. I'm sorry, Pocahontas' daughter with her husband Wahaganachi. Pocahontas with she married Cockham, and then she married John Rolfe. That Rolfe is tied into that Smith line, just so you all know. The Smith and the Rolfe family are very interconnected. And then we have the Great Running Water, Don Luis Velasco Iroquois. This is Mr. Powhatan himself, Chief Powhatan. Again, we have the Meese family. Let me see if there's any other names that I missed. Alexander no, no, that's the middle name. Okay. But anyway, that's some of the names. And so I took some of these names and I went back. I'm like, what? I'm so confused. How are these names getting up in these tribes like this? And all of these, names are going back to royalty. And I know the narrative is that they married into the nation. Again, I don't just looking at Chief Wad, if that is the right depiction of him statue, as well as the verbiage, the documentations of him. I just don't trust that he would just allow people to come up in that tribe like that, just foreigners. Um, and just so many of the Smith family is in here. It just went all the way back. So a lot of these lines that we've been struggling with, we're trying to figure out how do we get these names? How are they tied up to Indians? A lot of these suspects are part of this particular, not just this one. I'm not trying to pick on this tribe because again, this is my bloodline. I love my bloodline. I don't have any problem with my bloodline, good, bad, or indifferent. So, but I'm just trying to get some, maybe clarity for those of us that were struggling because I cried like a baby when I saw this because I couldn't believe it. I'm like, we were never taught this. How is this happening? We were never taught this. Never. I never knew the Bryans were part. The Wahaganachi was Bryan. I never knew there was a Sir Thomas Pettis that was also part of the Powhatan tribe. They never told us this, guys. So again, this is to push a narrative that we come from Africa. We have no connection, and the people that married into the tribal family would have been pale faces or they raped their way in. I don't know if they raped their way in. I can't say neither here nor there, but I do know they were definitely part of these nations. How they got there, I don't know, but I just again just going by what my information, and not just this chief. He's not the only one, so I'm not picking on him. All of them have this kind of background. They all do. So it was interesting to find that with him. And then I'm going to try and just leave some links that I can share with Amani. Now that I know how to put things in the back chat, I'll send them to or put them in Amani and come back to the video and just post them later. So you'll see me post some links. My screen name is Ms. Wright 27. You'll see me post those links of all the chiefs that I can find with their tribal name as well as with their Americanized name. So that'll help put some clarity on how you became an Indian so that you don't think it was a fluke or that you just, stumbled and tripped into the tribe and that, somebody, the narrative they're always going to disrespect our people no matter what. They're going to always disrespect our people. Hey, Amani, you're back.
Testing.
There's an echo.
Am I back?
Yeah, it's an
Okay.
echo though.
Okay. Okay. Sorry about that, family. Um, so it looks like they wanted to kind of see what you were doing so that you can screen share before I go back to show that video. Okay, they wanted to see that, so you can go ahead and screen share.
I'm waiting on your end. It's
Add
on your
your
end.
screen sharing there. You should now you're screen sharing,
Okay, got it. Got it. Got it. All right.
so you can go ahead
Yay,
and
he came back.
show. They want to see what you were talking about before.
Okay, perfect. Can you all see my screen?
Yeah, they are trying to stop this build family, but they can't.
Okay. Don't get discouraged. All righty. So I'm gonna go back. You can see my screen, right? Let me go back to the thing.
You there, Aretha?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm here.
I can't hear her now. Wait a minute. Wow. Testing.
Okay. I think they can hear me in the chat.
No. Okay. We
I'm just gonna go back.
can everyone hear Eris Johnson? Put a one in the chat if you can hear Eris Johnson.
Yep, they can hear me. They can hear me. All right, so I'm gonna keep going while you try to work on your equipment. All right, so this is my grandmother. Her name was Martha Bryant. Again, the cause of confusion and the
Oh,
chaos. They up here they put her name as Mary Bryant. It wasn't Mary, it was Martha. But anyway, this is the same. This is my
you guys
great
can hear
grandmother
Aretha.
on my. You okay?
Aretha, you there?
Yep,
Okay, hold on.
I'm here. Let me chat you. All right. Okay. They said they can hear both of us, so I'm gonna keep going. All right. So we have a Mary Bryan. This is how again I tripped down this doggone rabbit hole. The Bryan family and the Hill family. You can Google both of them together. It's gonna bring, especially of Tyrell County, North Carolina. It's going to have a great information. Uh, he who will remain nameless, but he also goes by the last name of Gates. He did research on this family and found out that they, sort of confirmed that they were all Indians. They were all melanated or so-called, Negroes or so-called Black or well, I won't say African American, but they were definitely heavily documented as melanated people out of North Carolina. So my grandmother came from North Carolina. She ended up in Mississippi, fell in love with the love of her life. That was my granddaddy right here, great granddaddy, Mr. Willie Hall. And then, so this was her father, Mr. Thomas Bryant, also out of Tyrell County, North Carolina, Scooperneck, Tyrell County. Now, his father was Micaiah Moses Bryant. Mother was Mahalia Bryant. One of these lines is not going to let me go back. Let me see if it's, is it this one? No, this one won't let me go back. So he was born in 1797. Again, you're not seeing any necessarily any melanated people. Let me go to here real quick. Okay, here we go. So in this lineage, right along. So Micaiah Moses, he has a will that he left. I hope there's some Bryants in the chat, even though I'm a Bryant as well, but I'm so far away. If you're in North Carolina, you need to go get your money. Go get your land. Find this will. This will is out here. There's a will for the Micaiah Moses Bryant Tarkington. It wasn't really Tarkington, but it was Bryant. And these are the children. So if you notice the children, they have them of different nationalities. They have one mulatto. This one they have her as black. Um, there's another. Let me see if I go back another one. I think they did the same thing. Rachel Bryant was that particular ancestor mother, and then they have the children as mulatto, chestnut color. They have mulatto for Micaiah. This is Micaiah, the one I was just looking at, and this one and this one are the same people. They just put it down twice. They called him Cage. And then also Cyprian Goodman, the one I was just talking about. Cyprian Goodman's brother was, I want to say John or Tommy. It was a bunch of them. They were part of, they came back as returnees. They have him as a slave master. He was not a slave master. He had his own children as apprentices. And then also that family is very was very well, extremely wealthy. So he married a Cecilia Bridget Bryan. They try to hide her first name because they don't want you to know that she was a melanated individual. So was he. But this is where it gets interesting for the family. So we go. I'm going to start with his line, and I'm going to go pivot over to hers. From her father was Needham Bryant. There were three Needham Bryants. This is the last one, if I'm not mistaken. There were three Colonel Needham Bryants. They were amazing when it came to ensuring that their offsprings would always have ties to this land. They were absolutely brilliant. And so we have this Needham Bryant, and then we have his father, Needham Bryant, and then his wife, Anne Rambo. When I clicked on her name before, I think I was under Ancestry, a crown came up under her name. And that was the first time I ever seen anything like that. I was like, what? Why would there be a crown under her name? That's when I started the realization of Isle of Wight, of Virginia, the importance of this particular um, area. And then also is saying that she's from wherever France was. I'm not sure exactly where France was at that time, but they're saying she's from France. Somebody asked me about Jernigan. I'm hoping they're watching this. They could see I didn't even know I had a whole Jernigan in my family. I knew I see the name, but I couldn't remember where I saw that. So this is a Jernigan. Someone wanted to know if this was an African name. It is not an African name. All right, so we're going to go back to the Bryan family. Let me just check the chat real quick. All right. All right, so then, okay, we're doing good. And then we're going back to William Bryant. Needham was named after this individual right here. All of these individuals are royal. Every last one of them, the Needham family, the Bryant family, the Rambo family. Then we're going to keep going back to William Bryant, 1655 Ireland. He married a Sarah Brinker. His father was John Bryant, and this is when I got tricked up. I saw John Bryant. His father was William Smith Bryant, Prince William of Ireland, and then his mother was a Morgan. She was a Morgan, Henry Morgan. I'm just gonna do it. I'm just maybe I'll just stop talking and just keep going back. So this is because I know time is of the essence. I know you guys are getting tired. All right. So then we got William Smith Bryant. Um, his son, I'm sorry, his father was Francis Bryant. He was Francis Bryan the second, if I'm not mistaken. There was two Francis Bryan. The one that got his eye out, jousted out because he was in a joust. It was a friendly joust, but his eye, he ended up losing his eye, unfortunately. That's my granddaddy, one of my great granddaddies. And then this is his son. He married a Smith. Here we go with the Smiths again. So then this Sir Francis Bryan, his father was the one I was just talking about, the vicar. They call him the vicar or vicar of hell because he was a direct cousin, first cousin to Queen Anne Boleyn. This is that family. He married the infamous Joan Fitzgerald. I'm sorry, yes. And then this Francis Bryan married Ann Smith. When this Francis Bryan came back home to America, they said he has 7 ship, is from Paul, shiploads of goods, including horses, some kind of rare horses that he had, some kind of stallions that he had. So it doesn't sound pretty poor to me, but maybe that's just me. So anyway, this is how I got tripped up into the Powhatan Nation because I didn't know this. So when I clicked on this, I'm seeing William Prince of Ireland. I'm seeing the Vicar of Hell. I already know who he is. I know the Smith. But then I saw this, and this freaked me out, you guys. I literally cried over this. So I'm showing William Smith Bryan. Now I just clicked on. I clicked on him. How did I get to him? And so then I go back and I click on him, and same individual. I think it was a son, maybe it was a son, but anyway, comes up with Haganachi Bryan. And I'm like, what is going what what the heck is going on here? So then I kept going back and I looking at Ireland, Virginia. So Ireland, this might have been just Virginia, who knows? But then I noticed this right here, this young lady. This is Jane Kaoki. This is the infamous they say don't exist, and this Pocahontas. It may have been a title, but her name was Matoka Rebecca Powhatan. That was her anglicized name, Rebecca, a part of the Powhatan Nation. This was her daughter. Jane was her daughter. She married into the Wahaganachi, the Bryan that I didn't know was a Bryan. She married him, and they had all these children. Now I'm wondering if these children, if these names were actually titles because they all have different last name, even though they have the same mother and father in most cases, or it could have been a clan mother. I'm really not sure. But out of this name, if you all can screenshot this, please do, because a lot of your names are coming up out of here. A lot of your last names are coming up out of here. So we have the pet. We already know the Bryan. We have the Pettis family. We have the Meese, M as in Mary, EESE family. I think this ends up being a title, a name to Arroya. We have the Crosley family. We have what else do we have? Martin family. We have the Hughes family. That comes up, all of that coming up out of here. And all of these names go back to what we would call so-called black nobility or English, they call it blackamoor, things like that. And I know people get a problem with blackamoor. I get it. I'm just trying to go just to let you know where a lot of these names, how they connect. So that was the shell shock for me. I wasn't expecting that. And then you can keep clicking on. let me see. I want to click on Pocahontas. So I'm going to click on her line, Matoka. And then this is her father, her mother right here. Here we go with John Roth. That's when I knew I was on the right. Because again, I'm still in denial. I'm like, this is a joke. This is a mean joke. That's really what I thought. And then we got the Roth family. We have the Allen family that comes up out of here. We also have, let me see, I think that's it for this particular one. I'm going to keep going back. I didn't save it, so it's going to take me to somebody I have no clue who that is. Let me see if I saved. I saved this one, thankfully. And here come your corn stalks. Here come your corn stalks. Here comes your Shawnee Indians are coming up out of here. So all of these people are connected. Don't think that they are not. They are. Let me go back to the chat. All right, good. We can see that. So now we're going to Cornstalk. Again, that was just a title. That was just a nation. That wasn't necessarily a name. There was, as you see, there were several people with that title. The Bear Clan was what they were known as collectively. Out of here, we have the Tucker. Tuckers were, where do I have it at? But they were definitely there was a, what was his name? I forgot his name. Um Robin Elder Nancy blah, 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 him. No, it's somebody I'm looking for here in this Tucker. Oh, where is he? But anyway, Paul Monkey, Indian Tucker. We got Mary. We got the Bass family up out of here. We have the let me see what else we have. Great Peter. When I saw this Great Peter, I don't know if this is Great Peter, the Peter the Great. Did I save him? He might have been Peter the Great for all we know. That's how tricky these people are. She would have been considered a queen, Queen Linda Tucker. Peter Tucker. I'm gonna save him because he might have been the real Peter the Great. Um, and then we have once again the king. I think this is the King family, I believe. So it's taking you to all of these names. All of these names are coming up out of the Shawnee tribe. So again, it's not a coincidence. We got to get this out of our head that these were just stranger dangers and they just happened to trip and fall and tootsie roll their way into these tribes and electric slide their ways into the tribes. They had to be blood related. And that's why I'm not saying everybody agrees with me or anybody agrees with me, but I'm so adamant that these were blood family members that came back home because they're just electric sliding their way up into these tribes like this, and they have this a carpenter right here. This is the Shawnee tribe. This is the who else do we have? All of these go back to wherever they say England is, and okay. So all of the Paw Monkey tribe. Where aunts was like a governor. When you see the name Where aunts, that means it's similar to what a governor would be. Um, Look at all these great names. So hopefully you all can go back. If you haven't had a chance to screenshot them, please do so. And again, this is how I ended up. Let me see if I can get back to the Bryan family, because this is how I found out these people were connected. I cried. I was so mad. I remember calling Amani. I was like, Amani, I don't think none of these wars happen because all these people are blood related. So it's like I don't believe nothing anymore. I really don't. I'm more extreme than maybe others. I'm extreme. I don't believe none of this stuff anymore. I just don't, because they were just I don't get it. But anyway, that's just me. I'm not saying that everybody should agree with me or disagree with me, but it's just not making sense to me. So here we go. This is the Bryan family, the same Bryan family that had, and here we go. Butlers up in here. We have the Ormonds. That was a title, but I think it became a last name as well. Once again, the Fitzgerald is a part of this. And then the Bryan, real name is Brian or O'Brien. This was a real name. So they dropped the Brian or the O'Brien. It just became the Bryans. We have the Desmond family a part of this. And again, they coming back or what do you call it? Just coming back to this part of the Americas from another part of the Americas where to be determined wherever Ireland was at that time. And then here we are. So that's why, and then this Smith family ties into the Watson family. That's how I ended up finding about the Watson family. This Smith family is also William Lewis Smith, goes back to England. Once again, I'm sorry I'm going so fast. Let me just slow my butt down. So these are the Smith. Jonathan Smith Knight. These are your castles. These are your royals. These are still people that are tied into that Powhatan nation that we just left that I still love. I don't have any problem with the Powhatans. Alice Watson, we talked about her with someone else. Um, Samuel Jackson, he was part of that Watsons. Look at this, the Weeks family. The Weeks, the one that Amani did that build on, I think they own Brooklyn, New York, or something like that. This is them. This is them right here. Married into the Smith family. I mean, all of these people are related. All of them. Don't think they're not. And here we go. We got Alice Hayton. She married the black. They call him Black. There's a Maynard called Blackmore Maynard. This is him. And he, let me see, one of his children or grandchildren happens to be the infamous John Smith. This is that Smith family. This is the same Smith family that married into the Bryan family, that married into the Fitzgerald family, married into the Watson family. All of these are the same bloodline people married into the Weeks family, married into the Hayden family. We're going to go back. Um, this is not a Lewis, this is a Smith. And then going back to the Bryan family, and here we are, part of the Powhatan Nation. This is not a coincidence. A coincidence. Also, I forgot to mention. I'm gonna say do her really, really quick. The Morgan family. Um, well, here she is right here, Catherine Morgan. She had an Indian name too. I forgot what it was, but this is the pirate. Lady, what are you doing over here? Like, what are you doing? How you end up in the Powhatan Nation? And she had an indigenous name. I had a pedigree chart that I foolishly gave to my sister, and I'm still regretting. I'm still kicking myself. But she had an indigenous name, Miss Morgan, out of Wales, of the infamous Thomas Blackbeard. This is Blackbeard. Sheriff, it would have been Sharif. This is that family. This is that bloodline. She ends up being part of the Paw Monkey tribe, and she does have. Believe me, she has an Indian name. I just can't remember what it was because I had it written on that sheet. So yeah, I just wanted to give that introduction. That's how I started coming up with the conclusion that all these people are related. Everything they told us is a lie. We are royal. This is our land. We're still the Indians on this land. We're still the Aboriginal people on this land. Those of us that stayed, there were those that stayed and those that went abroad and decided to build other kingdoms. And then they had to come back home during that Jacobite rebellion. When you are a prisoner of war or a prisoner per se, or if you are deported, they deport you back to your home of origin. And that's what happened with these people. So I hope you all, hopefully, that resonate with your spirit as well. Um, so
All right,
it
yeah, thanks for
just,
that there.
yeah, yeah, you're welcome.
Appreciate that. Can you hear me
Yep,
loud and
I said
clear?
you're welcome.
Okay. All
Yep,
right,
can you hear me?
thanks.
Okay, good.
Yeah, and before, so yes, family, they cut me off, but we will deal with this here. And before we close out, I want to show that documentary on Lord Benjamin Ross Stewart. As, yeah, welcome home, as promised. So let me share my screen here. And just to, speaking of Needham Bryan, um, now remember I showed this to the family, but just to remind you here, these are all the land grants issued to him. The land patent, Needham Bryant, North Carolina, 1784. Right? So we open this up, and it's like almost as if he owned all of North Carolina, right? And we go here, you see this here. It says certificate. Let's see here. They have the acreage listed here, right? Okay, we have the land description there, and this would be for one containing 100, right, and 50 acres, right? Survey for Needham Bryan. You see that there. And so we go back to the main page and look, the entire page are all of his land patents. One, two. I mean, look at all that. Look at all that. Okay. So major landlord there. So just wanted to kind of share that with the family. I did that before in a previous presentation. We'll just remind the family there. Um, and again, I'm sure all of that those land grants are unclaimed, right, to this day. So let's try to go back and show this video and make sure we have good sound, right? All right, so let's and let me know, family, if you can hear this now, okay? Let's make the screen big.
A 50-cent coin adds to a priceless piece of
Much
history
better.
for archaeologists. They found the home of Harriet Tubman's father, Ben Ross, in Dorchester County. And this to me was my clue to where did he go?
Let me know if you guys can hear that.
1808, that's the
We
year.
could, but I don't. It's
Tubman's
something in the background, like a
family, according to
noise
the
or
chief
something.
archaeologist from Maryland's Transportation Department.
Can they hear it now?
The location,
let me back it up. Let's back it up from the beginning there.
A priceless piece of history for archaeologists who say they found the home of Harriet Tubman's father, Ben Ross, in Dorchester County. And this to me was my clue to where did he go? Marked 1808, that's the year.
Marked 1808, the same year that Araminta Ross Stewart, aka Harriet Tubman's parents. Oh, sorry about that. Same year that her parents got married. So now this excavation site, family, this is Benjamin's Araminta Ross's father's land. Okay, that they're excavating. Benjamin Ross. Let's continue.
Department. The location is a 2,600-acre site that was bought by U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service in 2020 as.
Just stop it right there. What did they say? A 2,600-acre site recently purchased in 2020. 2,600 acres, family. We don't understand the scale of what we're dealing with. Our mind has been, they just we see things basically on a small scale. Our ancestors lived on a scale that was so massive, it's limitless. And we're not ready for that yet, family. We're not ready for that yet. It's still going to take us time to get to that point. Until we are walking on our ancestors' land, we're not there yet. Some are. Some have walked their ancestors' land and they know the scale. Okay, let's continue.
In addition to Blackwater National Wildlife Refuge. Just in time, as the river rises and valuable bits of the story were about to be lost. The property contains 10 acres that was left for Ben Ross in the will of his slaveholder.
Okay, now there we go with the spells. First they said they purchased 2,600. Now they're going to say, oh, his slave owner gave him 10 acres. Now we know that's comedy. Slaves, come on, family. Let's continue. Let's stop right there. What did he say? He said Benjamin Ross mined timber on his land and sold the timber. But he gave details about the logistics. The timber was transported to a shipyard and from there sent out from, what did he say? To use his exact terminology, free black mariners. What's a mariner, family? What is a mariner? We know what a mariner is. So Benjamin Ross used the timber on his land, and that timber was shipped to other locations globally. It could have been to other portions by mariners. We're not ready for the scale they were dealing with because we've been subject and victims of witches and warlocks. We saw they wanted to, a warlock put on there that Benjamin Ross is from Ashanti tribe in Ghana. They didn't want you to know this. Let's continue here.
Only the beginning of digging up evidence.
What we know so far, we know where that starts to stop. We know where Ben Ross lived. That's the first step, and that was the big one. So now our job is to excavate more of that site to learn what he had in that building. How big was that site?
Stop right there. What he had in that building. How big was it?
Tubman was born into slavery, escaped, and then
Okay, there we go with the witch and with the sorcery. Born into slavery, he had that's her father's land. If you're calling that slavery, where you're born and your father, has thousands of acres and he's in a merchant business shipping timber, we will all like to be born as slaves like that with those kind of parents. So we don't need to listen to the sorcery. I just wanted to share that with the family, just kind of see back in the past how things were in a grand scale that Lord Benjamin Ross Stewart was operating on. Okay, so we're going to continue this in the future with the Stewarts and go more into the history of the Stewarts. And yeah, so I just wanted to share that. It's very fascinating information about Araminta Ross Stewart, aka Harriet Tubman's father estate. Okay, so now hopefully we know this is valuable information. Appreciate the family, and we leave here wiser, stronger, and more powerful. And no, we're no longer victims of the sorcery by these spellcasters. Okay, so thanks a lot. We went kind of long here today, and I need to get some food in my stomach there. But yes, exactly, Susan Thomas. Whalers, she had whalers in her bloodline in New Medford. Exactly. Okay, Mariners family, Mariners. All right. So, and now think about that because when you talk about timber, you talk about these tall trees, and think about the tools and the level of science you need to not only grow it, and a tree could take 30 minimum of 30 years to get to a mature level, um, and then to cut those trees down, organize them, ship them out products with mariners, huge ships, and the process because most of the ships you need wood, and America, the land of being the land of milk and honey, we had all the resources to create all that stuff, but Araminta Ross's father was in the business of selling timber for many purposes. One of which I'm sure was to build other massive ships as well. So we got to get a clearer view on these particular Rosses and Stewarts, and we'll continue in phase part 2 of this here. We'll go deeper. All right. So hopefully this information was valuable to the family, and we'll leave here smarter and wiser. And as always, appreciate that. Get some sleep out there. I know it's late, especially on the East Coast there. All right. Have a great night, family. Take care.
Thanks,
Thanks,
everybody. Thank
everybody.
you.
Thank
Good night.
you.